Great. So I'm Roshan Patel. I'm the media producer at Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. First of all, welcome to the Environmental Film Festival in the nation's capital. We're here with Nick Robinson, who produced the film Ocean Odyssey. And yeah, I just wanted to take a second to thank the festival. I've been a part of this festival as a filmmaker, as a moderator, as a panelist, and so I was just very grateful that they asked me to keep being involved. So thank you. But yeah, we'll just start with an introduction to Nick. So Nick, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are?
Sure. Look, I'm a filmmaker. I started my professional life as a biologist, I suppose, as a marine biologist to be more specific. But I always wanted to get into making films, and I wouldn't have been a very good scientist anyway, I don't think, because I'm probably not. I couldn't concentrate on one thing for that long. So I've had a lifetime of filmmaking now in many genres, and for the last 15 years, it's been sort of the natural world for me. So I've been extremely lucky to be one of those people that gets to go out and film animals and tell stories about nature and how important it is to look after the place that we call home. So yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. And yeah.
That's great. I had a very similar trajectory of starting biology and realized I'd be a better storyteller than and create that room for a biologist who might be more talented than I was in that. So I can relate to that. So I'll just jump right into the film. So first of all, it's extremely beautiful. There's just amazing footage, and Dr. Sylvia Earle is always just a pleasure to listen to, and has just profound things to say no matter what it is she's talking about. So thanks for creating and offering it. So I guess my first question is, can you tell us a little bit about your role in this? I know that you were a cinematographer, producer, so just the ways in which you were helpful in creating this.
Definitely. Look, I've long wanted to create a film that explains how the ocean makes life possible on the planet. And I guess that comes from a place of, I've made a lot of natural history. I've done films about the reef. I've done films on various aquatic ecosystems. But, everyone sort of knows they have to protect the sea, but I don't think a lot of people really understand the mechanics of how the ocean, and how, more importantly, life in the ocean makes it all work, creates the oxygen, the rain, and the importance of that life in the ocean to the chemistry of the planet as a whole, and our existence. So this film came from that place. It was about creating a 101, I guess, ecology lesson in a beautiful way. So to create we came up with the idea, and then I was looking for a hook to take people on this journey, and we came up with the sort of concept of following Nemo's ocean current, the EAC, because everyone already knew it. And I thought that might be a nice journey to go on. It happens to be close to my house. It goes out the front of Sydney. So it was an obvious choice. About 3,000 kilometre long ocean current allowed us to tell the stories of ocean currents. And then we decided to follow my lovely friends, the whales, who, when I was starting my university degree, to see a whale was a very rare thing, and now we have lots of them. So there's a wonderful story there too. So it was an obvious choice to follow a whale on its journey from the reef to Antarctica, and along the way tell the stories of all the life-giving properties of the sea, if you like, the sort of stories that normally don't make it into these shows because they're not large carnivorous animals or the cutest and cuddly of dolphins, but we've told the story using some very charismatic animals as guides. And it's a film that's supposed to appeal, I suppose, to families and kids. But then, when Sylvia Earle finally agreed to be in it, that was just huge for me, because as a marine biologist, I mean, I don't think there's anyone that wouldn't want to meet Sylvia once in their lives and have her talk on their film. She's such a wonderful human being and has such a great message.
That's great. And I kind of just wanted to jump into that with the East Australia current, actually. Obviously, talking about ocean systems is slightly different than a lot of the ocean stories we see in terms of, protection and conservation. There's a lot of talk about wildlife and things like that, but the system itself is something that I think was really nice to be able to highlight and learn more about. This is less to do with filmmaking, but just a curiosity after I watched the film, is there any efforts, or have there been examples that of marine protected areas protecting things like currents or aspects of currents, or is that a direction it could go to potentially expand what a marine protected area is?
Look, I certainly hope so, because I don't know of any particular current that's been protected. There's certainly upwelling zones, which are usually those most productive places in the ocean. So I'm sure a lot of those areas have ended up being protected, even though it's probably less than 1% of the world's ocean that's protected in this way. Many of those areas are upwelling zones for the obvious productivity and the amount of wildlife there. But we're certainly seeing on the EAC, as the sort of warming of the climate happens, that EAC is getting stronger every year and pushing further and further in south. And it's moving a lot of these species along. So we have now marine protected areas that are in the wrong spot for the animals. The animals aren't tied to those boxes we draw on maps, and the currents are moving that space. So it's certainly a really interesting concept. And I know there's quite a few scientists that are trying to have those marine protected areas move with the bioregions, because they are moving further and further south.
Yeah, it's a fascinating problem to try to solve. So it just made me think of all those things. It's like, oh, these boxes aren't complete enough with having these currents. So exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so that sort of brings me to, when you watch the film, or I don't know if you've gotten this feedback from audience, but what are some of the ways that a citizen anywhere in the world could help with these kinds of issues? Because obviously currents are not just in Australia, they're all over the planet. So presumably what you're seeing here is what's happening, off of the coast of so many places.
Yeah, we tried to tell stories that were global in their nature, so because they do, these same stories happen everywhere. You could just swap out the species for something different, and you've got the same ecosystems all over the planet. Sylvia's, in terms of what people can do, I mean, I guess the first thing you have to do is care, and when you care, you have to sort of vote in that direction for people that are going to make those policy changes and try and help in that respect. I mean, I know, a lot of people like to eat fish from the sea. We have to be very careful about which ones we choose to eat, because commercial fishing is a huge drain on the ocean's ecosystems. And when you damage fish populations or whale populations or any of those animals, you're actually damaging the ocean's ability to produce oxygen, to produce rain, to be productive in other ways. So we have to look very carefully at which ones we choose to eat and continue to exploit, to make sure we're not overfishing. But I see this film as a bit of there's so many people moving in this direction of ocean conservation now. A lot of people are realizing how important it is, and making a film that helps Sylvia Earle get her message out, and Mission Blue that she runs, and getting people involved in those kinds of organizations and getting behind them, I think, is a big part of the solution, I suppose. It's definitely a growing movement, and it's great to see it starting to snowball and starting to take effect.
That's great. I remember one time I was at a presentation, and I heard her say, fish, rather than calling it fish food, fish friends, and just sort of the concept that, we don't have to think about all fish as being a utilitarian sort of product for us, but instead life that exists there. And I think it's, to that point, I think she's, has such a great message. And I guess, you answered this a little bit, but do you feel like, she talks about the 30% as being a start of protecting the ocean? How do you feel that's going? Do you feel like we're off to at least a start, even if it's slow? Or do you feel like, this is just, we're moving further and further away from this?
When I finished uni about, I think it must be nearly 30 years ago now. So when I finished uni, I thought this would have happened much quicker, but it's been very slow to get to the point we're at now. There's certainly, like, we're starting to see it. Like, the great thing is I've got examples in my backyard, like Sydney Harbour, when I was, in my childhood to the age of about 25, was the most horrific dead ecosystem you could imagine. Today, it's really thriving. We see whales in there and dolphins and stuff. So when you do look after these places, they bounce back, and they're amazing. So there's a lot of hope there for the places that are marine parks, but there's definitely not enough marine parks. And if Sylvia's dream of 30% could come true, I'd be stoked if we could have more. I'd obviously like that more, but we really have to work to something, I suppose. It's such an important thing, and we have to look at really protecting large areas to do this, because as we know, like some of these fish that we follow around, they travel thousands of kilometers. They don't hang out in the 100 square kilometer box that we draw for them.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm going to switch over to something hopefully a little bit more fun and light in terms of just process. I mean, as a filmmaker, when I watched the film, but then I was reading a little bit more about it on the website, and I saw that it's in IMAX and on giant screens and in projection domes and all that sort of, all these different formats. So can you talk about what some of the challenges were to make something for those kinds of spaces versus, a traditional sort of storytelling experience?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's, making stuff for the giant screen is so amazing, because when you watch it in the theater, it's way better than when you saw it in real life. Everything is magnified. What I see in the viewfinder is I just start noticing all this incredible detail. So it's a wonderful format to make stuff for the giant screen. I mean, I guess in terms of the process, the hardest things about doing that, I've made I've shot as a cinematographer, shot about 5 IMAX films now, and I'd made 2 before I made this one, so Ocean Odyssey, and there's different framing because the screens are so large. There's a number of technical differences between this and a TV show, and we always try and cover both a little bit so that we can also show it to people on smaller screens, but it has to be a completely different cut. And I guess the aspects like 3D filmmaking in 3D underwater is a real punish. It's hard work. Not many animals hang around while you get all your technical bits right. So that can be really hard work. We developed our own camera, in fact, to film whales in 3D, and there's some stunning 3D whale shots in there. And we developed a camera that was like a special housing with 2 reds, inverted, stuck together, lenses, you name it, wet. We had to build this thing. So that was a very expensive and time-consuming exercise to try and create a camera that's got very limited use. You can only use it in perfectly clear water, which, frankly is very rare, because as soon as you get stuff floating past in the water, the 3D bends your eyes and it doesn't work. You can't have stuff close and far. But we got incredible whale shots out of this camera. They might be the most expensive shots in the history of television, just because of the cost of the camera to get them. But on the whole, it's just a case of, stable imagery, really beautiful. And I get one of the keys to it was we took a year, and we have sort of friends, dive clubs, dive instructors, just people that live on the coast that go out every day. There might be spear fishermen all up and down the Australian coast. And what we'd said to them in the lead up to the year was, as soon as your place is perfect, when we knew where these areas were, when the conditions look like they're coming together, call us and we'll turn up the next day and try and get this whole journey in perfect conditions, which is not a luxury I've normally got in films. You normally have a 3-week shoot schedule, and you stick to that, and you go and you get what you get. Whereas in this case, we went and we timed it all, and we would just literally drop everything and go whenever it was right to try and tell that story in the most beautiful way possible.
That's amazing. Every now and then I feel like when I hear about things like that, I just sort of have to marvel that anything gets shot and filmed and put on a screen, given how much effort goes into just a couple seconds sometimes. And so it's just always sort of amazing to think about just salt water, heavy electronics, right conditions, having a whale show up.
It was an amazing experience, because as a result of doing this film, I feel like I rode in an ocean current for the whole length of it. That was a cool thing to do as a biologist, to go and ride the different parts of the current and film those ecosystems all the way down, and at the end of the show feel like you've done the EAC. Like that's a great. I felt like as close as you can get to being a marine organism.
That's amazing. I think you sort of answered this question, but as a filmmaker, what was your favorite part of the production of this? Like, are there any specific moments where you were like, this just fell into place in the way that I just could not have planned any better?
Oh, look, meeting Sylvia Earle and interviewing Sylvia Earle was obviously the hugest highlight for me, because she's incredible, and her message comes through so strong in this film and gives it so much soul. So that was probably the biggest highlight for me. But in the underwater scenes in the film, there's a number of scenes that are beautiful in all their own ways. And the Antarctic, well, there was a seal colony we dived with, which was just It was amazing. There, you know, thousands of seals coming up to you and curious about you. But then Antarctica as well was the Antarctic segment. We shot as part of, we were shooting another film down there, and I shot that segment as well. And that segment was, you know, like animals that come up to you and want to know you. Penguins walk up while you've got the camera on the side. You see them out in the sea, you're filming them, and then they swim towards you, jump out of the water and peck you on the leg and look at you and wonder what you're doing. You know, it's pretty magic. There's some magic moments in it. But obviously, you know, most of making a film is not the filming, it's the organizing, the writing,
Yeah.
the financing, all of the other sides that, you know, it's a wonderful job, but it's not all those amazing wildlife moments. They're my favorite, is just being out there and actually, you know, experiencing it and meeting these fascinating scientists that you know, I learn something from every time. So it's you know, you've got the best guides in the world often in these, when you do this job. Yeah.
And it sounds like, you know, when you get to those points, all that paperwork is worth it when you get to hang out with a colony of penguins. It's kind of, it's hard to imagine a job that has that many highs that come with the more tedious aspects of it. So that's amazing that you get to experience that.
Sure. Hey, yeah, no, I definitely feel like I've been extremely lucky in life to end up doing this. Yeah.
Well, I'll just, I know we're kind of wrapping up on time, so I'll just leave it with, you know, what's next for you now that you've done this film. You wanted to be a marine biologist. You made this film that's about the East Australia current. So what comes next for you?
Well, I just released a film. I made a film. I followed the life of a tiny fish, a tiny pufferfish on the Great Barrier Reef, and we filmed its journey through the micro worlds of the reef. It's called Puff. It's on Netflix, and that was an amazing journey into the tiny worlds of coral reefs and through the eyes of this baby fish, who's about that big. You know, he's like a very little thing. So that was a really cool adventure, and now I'm working on a series on how life works on land. So the connectivity on land. So it's called The Eagle and the Ant, and it goes across the Australian continent, looking at, you know, from the bacteria in the soil to the clouds in the sky, the connections between all these animals and how those ecosystems work. So it's always the same theme for me. I'm just trying to. I love it because I get to talk to all these people about how nature works, and it makes my wanderings and filmings more interesting every time.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for, you know, making those kinds of films. They're amazing to watch, and I will keep an eye out for Puff and some of this other work. And yeah, thanks again for being part of the festival. And yeah, for all the guests, just you know, I hope you have a good experience with the festival. I know that there's a lot of ways to experience it this year. So thanks for taking some time to watch this film and this Q&A.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm so proud to be in the festival, and I really hope people like it, and it just puts another little piece of the equation towards making people care.